Okay, hey everyone. We are going to talk about bots. And Sarah, it is great to have you on the stream. Welcome.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So before we jump into the nitty gritty and sort of talk about all the great work you and the team have done on bots, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role here at 343?
So I'm a designer on the multiplayer team. I'm primarily responsible for bots, and a lot of that is kind of looking at the game, looking at multiplayer, looking at our modes, and making sure that we, with the help of our fantastic engineers, get the bots to play the game in a way that's representative of humans.
So obviously bots, huge brand new addition to Halo Infinite multiplayer. We took them out for a preview, a little test drive, and debuted those in our technical preview back in July. Landed really, really well. A lot of excitement around those. But could you just kind of walk us through a little bit about the origin? How did bots come to be? What are the goals and sort of what's the intent that you and the team had when you set out to bring this to the game?
Well, I think Tom did a really good job of kind of setting up the reasoning for why we did this in our last preview when he talked about how multiplayer can be kind of intimidating, right? It can be a little bit scary to dive into, even though it's really fun. And so the goal of bots has always been like, how can we make a tool that allows more people to experience the fun of multiplayer kind of where they're at right now, whether that's I'm just starting the game for the first time and I'm trying to figure out the controls, or it's, I had a rough day at work and I just kind of want to lean back and get some medals and have a good time. We just want bots to be there to kind of expand when multiplayer is available.
So the bots made a big splash in the tech preview. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I'm sorry to say that I'm told that over 65 million bots were actually slayed during the course of that couple days. So suffice it to say that they put in some work, right? And they landed really, really well for the community. But from your perspective, what did you see? How was the response from your perspective? Any big takeaways or sort of things that you and the team were looking for coming out of that first tech preview?
Well, I will say for us, the response was a little bit overwhelming. We've been working on this feature for a long time, and we'd really only said that they were in the game, but we hadn't had a ton of feedback yet on it. And so it was a lot to go from being very quiet to having so many people playing with them, enjoying them, giving us feedback on how they could be better. And the team just kind of ate it up that whole weekend. It was just watching people play and really enjoying it. They definitely had some bugs, some that we knew about going into the preview, especially with their movement around maps. But the preview helped us find a lot of things that we hadn't caught yet or just weren't expecting. Like, we weren't sure where the difficulty stacked relative to the player population, and we got a lot of data that indicated that, yeah, we have some room to make them a little bit more challenging, even though our goal is to provide an onboarding experience. So it was a phenomenal amount of feedback and input that we can just really kind of put to use to make them even better.
Yeah, the difficulty one in particular, I think kind of interesting because, I'll be the first to admit, I think we maybe kind of overhyped it a little bit, right? It's like, oh my gosh, the Spartan bots are coming. We're super scared. Safe to say that, the Spartan bots, while not meant to be punishing, as per your design goals, weren't really the next level that I think you and the team had intended, and certainly not to the extent that we had overhyped this big experience.
For this next preview, we've bumped the difficulty kind of across the board, especially because we're now introducing recruit into the mix, so there is another option for that kind of earlier player who wants a lighter experience. So the bot should be a little bit more challenging this time, and we've kind of flipped on a couple of new behaviors that we're interested in seeing. So Spartans will share some information with each other as though they're teammates trying to call out positions. So really curious to see how people react to that.
We could shift over, let's talk about that a little bit more. We have an even bigger preview coming up. The bot arena is back. Also, at some point, I'm pretty sure we'll have a new map added as well, right? It's Behemoth, which we'll see here in a little bit, but it's a vehicular arena map, right? So How does that weigh in when you and the bot team are sort of approaching the design?
That map is interesting. It's a much wider experience. It's got longer sight lines than some of our other maps that you've played on previously, and that can pose different challenges in terms of what bots get engaged in and what they react to. Bots have some quirks when it comes to vehicles. They know that they don't like them, but they aren't sure how to really deal with them. So that's something that we're aware of, but excited for people to get a chance to use vehicles against some targets and have a good time.
One of the things about bots, that I think is really cool is you and the team have done a great job of they just feel natural. They feel like they're really emulating the way real players play. And at least to me, they don't seem cheap. They don't seem like they have omnipotence or extra health or 100% accuracy. How did that process, like how hard is it to try and create these AI code pieces that seem to model real life behavior pretty accurately?
And there are parts of it that are pretty straightforward, like things that are kind of button presses, right? Like getting them to shoot, getting them to just throw a grenade is stuff that Halo AI has been doing for a long time. But where it gets difficult is how do you represent when to do something? When should I shoot versus when should I back off? When should I throw that grenade? When should I push forward? And we've really tried to have that decision making from the bot standpoint be representative of how players at a certain level think, partially so that people know that they're learning when they're engaging with these bots, right? They can see bots mimicking behaviors that they may see in matchmaking, because that's always our goal, is a way to onboard you into playing against other humans. And you can also see bots make mistakes. Like a way to learn is to see someone do something incorrectly. So you can see a bot, especially at a lower difficulty, not disengage when you had its shields broken. So like you can be like, okay, that was a mistake, and I'm going to take that knowledge and use it to improve my gameplay.
Now, you and I talked a little bit earlier before this video about some of the changes and kind of how bots are going to show up in the preview too. One of the things I want to touch on briefly is the bot arena is going to be a little bit different in terms of last time, we had we went through the bot progression with a different difficulty of bots sort of each day, right? That's not how we're doing it this time. We're going to have one bot playlist, and I think it's just going to sort of be a random assortment of bot difficulty on the enemy team, right?
Yeah, so what that means is that from match to match, you'll have different difficulties of opponents. So you might play a game and have a bot team that is 2 Spartans, a recruit, and an ODST, and your next match might be against 2 Marines and an ODST and a recruit. And what we're doing there is we want feedback on what it feels like to play against mixed teams. We got some feedback from the last preview that playing against all one difficulty could feel a little bit flat. And we're also, again, looking for a bunch more data on how these difficulties are stacking against a wide player audience.
And I think, we're going to talk about some of the Academy editions here coming up shortly, but good news is, not to steal thunder from our next segment, but with the addition of training mode, at that point you can configure the bot difficulty. So if you just want to warm up against the recruits, you can do that, right?
Absolutely. If you're going into the bot playlist and you hit a couple matches that are a little bit too intense for you, definitely recommend going into training mode. You'll have a lot more control there over what's spawning and what kind of difficulty settings you want to be engaged with.
So, we have talked a lot over the course of this road to launch about how launch is just the beginning for us. And, that really applies to every facet of the game, from the, multiplayer all the way down to the bots as well. Now, obviously, we're in sort of the shutdown mode here. We are in the in-game, if you will. We don't have that much further to go, until we hit our launch date on December 8th. How are you and the team thinking about sort of bots going forward and sort of, can you tease anything or just sort of give us a hint of sort of where do you see bots going in future seasons beyond launch?
I mean, a lot of it is just looking at what we have in the game now and asking questions about how we can take that to the next level, right? We talked earlier about the quirks they have with vehicles, and that's an active question. Like, how can we improve their interactions with vehicles? How can we represent sort of that really high skill player thinking that we don't have in Spartan necessarily, so that we can provide more warm-up tools for a broader audience? How can we take some of the aspects of their difficulty and make that more customizable? So if someone wants, say, to disable grenade throwing when they're practicing, like, how can we give them those tools? So just, thinking through how we can make it a more useful tool for people. And as part of that, we're going to look at how people engage with them at launch, and that's really going to inform how we move forward.
So, Sarah, before we wrap it up, just any kind of final words or sort of parting thoughts on behalf of the bot team that you'd like to share with our community today?
I think just thank you. Like, it was so helpful to get all of the data and feedback we got from preview 1, and just really exciting and motivating to see people engaging with stuff we worked on for a while, and just excited to get more of that feedback and appreciate everyone's time.
Well, I cannot wait to have another round of insiders, even bigger audience this time, go head to head with some bots that have seen some adjustments and improvements since last time. Different difficulties, a little mixing, matching, as Sarah said. So we can't wait to see how you all fare. And of course, looking for your feedback to continue improving as we go forward. We'll be back in just a minute. We're going to sit down and talk about the Academy and some of the new additions that you can look for in this next preview. Be right back.